Hello everyone, welcome. We're continuing our reading of this wonderful book, which has lots of different oral traditions that were written down for us about Native American customs, folklore, legends, and such. So we were in a new section now, and it was part 9, and it's titled Something Whistling in the Night, Ghosts in the Spirit World. So apparently we're going to learn even more now about what the tribes thought. So let's continue. Great book, by the way. Ghost stories and tales of the dead are essential parts of almost every people's folklore, and American Indians are no exception. The ghosts here, however, are not necessarily always evil or threatening. The dead don't automatically become ghosts either, so all haunting visions are not necessarily spirits of the departed. Okay, so that's something unique. They don't automatically become a ghost. So let's see. Among some tribes, there are only vague ideas of the existence of an afterlife. Death was the end, and that was that. At the other extreme of the cultural spectrum were the burial mound builders like the Natchez. Okay, so this tribe is spelled Natchez. Mound builders, huh? Let's see. Who practice an elaborate death cult with pyramids for the dead. Had no idea that they constructed pyramids like that. The ruler was buried with treasures of copper, mica, shells, and pearls, as well as a host of women and retainers dispatched to serve him in the next world. Okay, but were the women dead already, or did they die, right, and then get put in, or were they just like there to take care of the grave? What does he mean? In between are the cultures that envision the souls of the dead living in the spirit land in much the same way they have lived on earth. The men hunting buffalo, gathering crops, or fishing. The women tending the home or teepee. So look at this so some people really try to infantilize Native Americans as vegans who were sharing their women with everybody and that there was no such thing as gender roles. I mean, here you can clearly see that the men really were proud of being able to hunt and being proud that their women knew how to run a good home, right? So it's beautiful how when you look at how people fetishize certain cultures in the name of wokeness, but then if you read more about them, you come to realize how masculine they were and how they really valued that. The Mandans believe that people had 4 souls. Okay, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. 4 souls, huh? And the sage and the meadowlark souls merged to form the spirit that went on to another world. The 3rd soul remained in its old lodge, and the 4th appeared from time to time simply to frighten people. That's a little bit of humor. That's kind of funny. That's kind of funny. The 4th is the one that being the last one that frightens people. That's interesting. In variations on the classical Orpheus theme, the tales here recount several voyages made by the living into the land of the departed. Okay, so Orpheus is kind of a Greek theme. From either curiosity or devotion to a dead relative. While the Greek hero follows his beloved to a world underground, his Indian counterpart may find himself traveling to the bottom of a lake, across the Milky Way, or over the mountains and plains similar to those inhabited by the living, although the road is usually strewn with traps for the cowardly or careless. Aha! Notice this. Okay, here's a cool similarity. So in the Native American culture, in some of these tribes, as lore, right? There's this sort of road. The Chinese have it, so many cultures have it. The straight way, the path, the smooth road, right? A way you can get to another better condition by avoiding the traps. So again, here you'll be able to see sort of like a testing traps of wits. Will you be careless? Will you be a coward? Will you get trapped? So notice this cowardly. They didn't want just effeminate, soft, really delicate men, right? You didn't want to be a coward, right? There's different forms of being courageous, right? So it doesn't have to just be with arms. However, the warrior side of the tribes is very clear. Now, going to a dead relative, it kind of shows you how deep they were then to their family, right? And ancestors. They really valued that. The bottom of the lake, we heard that in another story, the fish people. Remember, it was really funny. That one, there was also the tale of the woman who, was a beaver, part of the beaver people. So that's another interesting part of the lore. Okay, now exchanges between the dead and the living are common. Okay, so there's a difference here. Okay, so let's see how they quantify it, because there's like the dark occultists will be like, oh, you talk to the dead. Other people's like, oh, you talk to a ghost. Oh, you talk to a demon. Oh, you talk to a jinn. Oh, you talk to an alien, right? There's different groups all over the world where they'll describe some types of humans being able to communicate with entities that are different than us, Homo sapiens, right? So here again, you'll see that even in the Native American culture, there is this sort of living and dead. Either way, I would still be freaked out, and I myself, if someone's like, I'm gonna try to talk to someone who's dead, I'd be like, goodbye, not trying to do that. But it is interesting that they have it as well. Women suddenly find out that they have married a ghost, a discovery that puts an interesting twist in romance. So that is interesting. Women marrying a ghost. And some are like, people worry about you marry a jinn, or you marry a demon, or you marry like some weird alien shapeshifter. A lot of different cultures today and in the past, and most likely in the future, will always try to play that, whether it's in fantasy stories or poetry. It's still something that humans, we get scared of. So even in the psyche of the tribes back then, even they would fear women, that you would marry somebody who was really just not a human in the way in which you would have hoped. The lives of the dead and the living are not generally compatible over the long run. Oh, remember when we read that story about the guy and he wanted his wife back and she died? And so he married her, and she was like, was like a ghost, and then she had this smell though of a corpse. Remember that? And it was interesting, and he tried to run away from her. It's very interesting. All the stories that we read, they're being reiterated here for us. It would seem each must return to his or her own kind eventually, so that order may be reestablished. So notice this: no intermarrying of the spirit realm with the human realm. Relations with the departed continue, however, through ritual. Okay, so different Chinese philosophers of the past in the Confucian era, right? That dynasties and such, where that time period was, they also thought that certain rituals, some of the philosophers, the Chinese philosophers, felt that the rituals would be able to communicate with their ancestors. However, in Islam, we've learned that no, it's not something. It's all an illusion. But again, it is quite telling that how many religions were quite obsessed with trying to use a ritual to talk to people who've died. Among many tribes, a warrior must purify himself, fast, and abstain from sex in order to appropriate the ghost of an enemy he has killed. So notice this. Again, the men being able to resist women, to abstain from sex, so they're able to control their lust, really fortify themselves. So this sort of, the monkeys or the apes, bonobos, a lot of people like to fantasize about a bonobo culture, and they sometimes disgustingly say like Native Americans, because they dressed in a very simple way sometimes, they must have been hedonistic, horny toads, and it was cruel for anyone to demand they dress different. But here clearly it's like they may have dressed showing some parts of themselves, but the men were not just chihuahuas humping the air all the time, right? They were not doing it in a way to promote hedonism and, orgy type of depravity, right? Clearly, if he was able to withstand the woman just to get rid of his enemy's ghost upon him, surely, while also fasting, right, their men are very fortified and spiritual. They were not just these hippy dippy summer of love weirdos as they get put in today by many people on the woke side of history. So, again, another example of the evidence of tribal warrior Native American culture. Just because they had long hair didn't make them feminine at all.